Welcome to Play to Your Best Summit Masterclass series that we're bringing together experts in mindset, nutrition, training, recovery, and in gut health, which is all of those actually. And I want to just welcome Dr. Lisa Sulsenti here today and to speak with us on everything about the gut. So welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, this is, as we know, like, and as I've just briefly talked to you about, it's like at the foundation of our being. And so I'm truly, truly excited to get into some of the nuances and understanding what is gut health, what is perimenopause, what can we detangle them, do we need to detangle them, and where do we start with this conversation with ourselves, and how do we build some awareness? So I'm super excited. But let me first introduce you in just in a little bit of a way here, because I think what's fascinating when I look at your bio, you are a Christian chiropractor, nutritionist, author, leaky gut expert. You have been doing this for many, many years, 20 years, and have worked in such a diversity of fields. So heart disease, high blood pressure, digestive, thyroid, hormonal imbalances, fibromyalgia, like it goes on. What's fascinating to me is that you have this one hand that's looking at autism and in spectrum disorders and sensory. And then on this other hand, you're bringing in, your expertise in the gut. And what I want to just ask you is how related are these, and are they married to each other? And like such a range of issues that you have really been able to support and help people in. And what's the commonality here? Because we're whole people. And how is it that you weave them?
That's a great question. I kind of stumbled across it, which I think is a lot of our stories. Once you see people like grab into something, they'll have their story and they'll say, just kind of happened to me. So my background is I have a degree in nutrition, and then I went off to chiropractic school, and in chiropractic school, they teach more nutrition. So I have a pretty strong background in neurology and in nutrition. But so being a chiropractor, being a nutritionist, I was kind of always in that realm of high blood pressure, cardiology. My dad had 2 open heart surgeries. So, you kind of fall into what comes into your life, women coming in, and we're just dealing with like these issues nutritionally. But I then became a mom, and I have a son. All my sons are really on the spectrum, but my middle one, it was interfering with his ability to just function. So I didn't even know, because he's 22 now. When you go back to when he's 4 or 5, and I would drop him off at preschool, and they would call me in an hour to come get him. And I would just be like, what is this? This isn't normal. All the kids are coming out with their cute little, art projects, and mine's in the corner. I'm coming earlier. If he did make it, he would be in the corner a mess, and he would be doing stuff like rocking and hitting his head. And I was just like, what is going on? Because back then there was really
they didn't know.
Open communication or knowledge of this stuff. I lucked out where my best friend was an OT, and she was talking to me about sensory processing disorder. And so, of course, being the neurology background, I was like, what do we have to do? So I got into autism, Asperger's, autism spectrum disorders. They just kept reclassifying things and diagnosing things differently. Because of him. I mean, he wound up being in special ed, and it's a whole big story, and it wasn't easy at all, because I realized the education system at that time, or at least where I'm in, didn't have anything. So I'm also a pioneer in fighting the school districts and fighting for teachers. And when I mean fighting, money doesn't go into special ed. They don't have the programs. So I'm also a pioneer in that, but I fell into it really because I was forced to. And what happened basically in a nutshell was they would tell me he can't have gluten, your typical allergens, like you can't have dyes, you can't have this, you can't have that. And I, of course, was like, well, how does wheat get to the stomach and then to the brain? It's impossible. So I was like, I'm not taking him off wheat. That makes no sense. So when we have to get these continuing education credits to keep your license, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go to these leaky gut seminars. I don't know what it is. Right. Yeah. So I just started at the bottom, at the basic of the pioneer of this coming out, and just went to whether it was an MD or a DC teaching it, or a naturopath, with because that kind of crosses different realms. I just went. I just kept going and going and going.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, there's something here. The gut affects the brain. And that's how it started off. It started out with the gut brain connection.
Right.
And healing a child's gut allows them to make the neurotransmitters. It allows lots of things to happen. And then removing these food triggers, these food sensitivities that the child has, also helps with the brain function. So that's where I began helping my son Luke. And then I started on myself because I, of course, had irritable bowel due to all the stress and everything going on. And I had a gallbladder out that really shouldn't have been out. So I had this whole situation going on with myself. So I was like, I'm going to try myself. So all of a sudden it was helping with me. And then the science was coming out where there's actually a gut body connection. So I was like, oh, I could bring this into practice. Like I could do this. So I've just brought it into my office, not expecting much.
Yeah.
And that's where that cross connection comes, that marriage that you're talking about, where all of a sudden thyroids were clearing up, polycystic ovaries, and things I just was like, what? like, oh my gosh. And that's when I realized the power of the gut with the whole body. And just things that we just always had trouble just getting over the hump with. And chronic fatigue was a big one. All the joint pain that we'd be adjusting people, and I put on a healthier diet, anti-inflammatory diet. We just couldn't get them to a certain level. And then so we started doing the Kind Gut program, which is what I named it. It would just go boom. Even myself, everyone's health was just like boom. So I was like, oh my gosh, the gut is like the second brain is what they call it. So that's like that, how I got to this umbrella of things that I do.
Right.
And really my whole focus was really just the Asperger's in the beginning. And then it took it to different levels. The testing since then has gotten phenomenal. And every day it just gets better. There's a new one right now that I can't remember. They keep coming. They came out with neurotransmitters. They came across with antibodies that cross the blood-brain barrier. They came out with this new one. I can't remember the name of it, but I was just like, oh my gosh, when can I find the time to learn this? Because the tests are so scientific that you have to spend a lot of time learning them. So there's this new one that I was like, I can't even believe they're doing this. It had something to do with autism. And I was like, this is great genetics.
Amazing.
It is. And I can't keep up with it because it's exploding, but
Yeah.
I'm doing my best.
I think, yeah, but I think that there's something really that I like important to say about this. I listen to a lot of experts on many, many things. And, the gut health really interests me. And what amazes me is the people that are really doing that leading research and in the universities and like on cutting edge are just like, we haven't even gotten started.
Yeah.
And like, we know a lot of things now that we didn't know, as you're evidencing. And we know, I think, and this is what I'm excited about our conversation today, is that we know how much we can heal, and we know how much of an improvement there is. And we also know that we have this enormous sea of like understanding that's still out there in the world, because it's so vast. When we talk about microbiome, we're talking about billions and trillions. I don't even know how many, like we're talking about something that is so extensive that it's hard to understand when you're looking at such a vast, landscape.
Yeah,
right?
it is. And we only are touching upon it. So I think in 10 years, it's just going to be more and more and more. It's incredible, but we can, we're having success with what we know now. So I can't wait for it to move forward.
Yeah. And so like in some ways, what I, and we will get into it right now. So it's like, keep it simple, because we can keep it simple. And there's so much that we are still going to learn about it to be able to optimize further in the future, which is an exciting on the frontier of the work that you're doing. So let's get into it. And you use this term leaky gut. Can you help us understand, like, what are we talking about when we say leaky gut?
So we're talking about two things. One thing is a leaky gut is inflammation in the gut. So in the medical world, they'll call it gastritis, colitis, diverticulitis. They call the itises. They just name the inflammation in the area where it's at.
Okay.
But the most important thing about a leaky gut is that gut wall. So I tell people, think of your skin. You can see it. It's a huge surface area of your body. But the inside of you, in your gut, think of like the inside of your mouth, the inside of you, your gut is 20 something feet long. So it's a huge surface area.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the largest organ inside the body. And the wall of the gut is where leaky happens. And the medical terminology is permeable. So if things are supposed to cross over the gut wall, like vitamins, things can permeate from the gut to the blood, but not everything should. And
Right.
the gut wall has proteins in it that's supposed to keep the gut wall really strong and almost like, and they're like little gatekeepers. They decide like what's allowed to cross over and what can't.
Right.
When that wall gets compromised or damaged, and it is a physical damage, our blood tests can now test and see the damage, see the level of it. It becomes too permeable, right? Too sifty, like things just start sifting across but shouldn't. Right. And inflammatory particles can, food proteins, things, bacteria can, things that just shouldn't. And that's where we create disease. This is where we get, problems. So leaky is just a general term saying that the gut wall is leaking. It's not like there's a hole right in your intestines, because you would really be dead, right? So right. It's not leaking out like a hole in your bucket. That song I always say to people, it's not a hole. It's just that the gut wall is damaged and it's getting too permeable. Now the question is, the second part of it is, what is causing that? And so a leaky gut really refers to the other part where your body, your gut, the wall has an immune system there, that mucosal lining. And so when, for some reason, the body attacks certain proteins in foods, we call these food sensitivities. So when you're eating the foods and you're digesting the foods, some of these proteins become antigenic, meaning that the body doesn't like it. For some reason, it just starts attacking it. And every time you eat it, it just keeps attacking it. It will send out the T cells, the B cells, and eventually what you get is an antibody. And that becomes what we call food sensitivities. That's the cause of the inflammation. So when that happens, it gives off a lot of histamine, which can mimic allergies. It can mimic like that cough, the reflux, like a lot of things, sinus things, because histamine is released with allergies and sinuses. And then it gives off cytokines, which are super inflammatory particles. And that is what attacks the gut wall. So it starts off with your gut wall is attacking food particles. It gives off inflammatory particles. I just call them little Pac-Man. And they attack the gut wall. And then just chaos breaks out, And you don't really know it because you just keep eating the thing because you're not really putting it together. It's very hard to put together with food sensitivities because you eat something on a Sunday, you can have a reaction on a Thursday.
Okay.
So it's really hard to like, which food between Sunday and Thursday is the culprit. That's really hard. And a food allergy is a bit different. It comes from a different reaction in the immune system, and that's a little bit more immediate. It's not from the, primarily it's not from the gut. They do kind of cross over, but so that's a different thing. But the food sensitivities are the cause of the leaky gut, and then the leaky gut is really that inflammatory process that occurs at the gut wall and can spread throughout the body.
Is it primarily from nutritional sensitivities that you see this issue, or is it also from other concerns or issues like stress? Like how do other aspects of our lives come into this idea of leaky gut, or is it start with the nutritional sensitivity and then is exacerbated by other factors?
So they say there's two direct causes. I mean, I'm sure there's a few other little factors. As I've been working with people, I've seen some other things, but the one main one is food and the other one is stress.
Okay.
So, and typically they go together. When I have a patient that's doing really well, and I just had one yesterday who came in very upset. She's doing great on the program. Like her symptoms are going away. It is a symptom oriented thing, So let's say her reflux has gone away, her bloating's gone. Let's say that now she has a normal stool every day, right? So now we know that the program's working for her. She's got energy, she's feeling great. She goes and gets her blood work and her cardiac levels were high. And she goes, how's that possible? And I said, her husband just died and her daughter almost lost her baby and had like, the baby came out at like 4 months or 5 months. Everything went fine, but she's super stressed, right? She's having a highly stressful emotional year. And I looked at her and I was like, well, cortisol, I was trying to tell her like cortisol is getting dumped into your system. And so it's going to increase, she had her they were telling her she's pre-diabetic, all the stuff. And I said, yeah, right, you're just in stress mode. You're in survivor mode. So yeah, stress can also take our blood work
and shift things.
And it can create leaky gut. I say, thank God she's on the program, because it's kind of saving her gut from that stress. But stress is a big thing. And so I looked straight at her. I'm like, we this is hard to say when someone just died, her husband, but I'm like, we've got to get you avenues to release the stress. I can't take her stress away. She has to go through the grief process, but I'm like, we've got to help you with that part,
Yeah.
So yeah, stress is a big thing. I mean, I believe stress can cause tumors,
Mm-hmm.
So I think stress and exercise, we're getting around that. That's a big thing too.
Right. Is there a point in which, and I don't know if you can answer this question, maybe not, but is there a point in which the stress of exercise gets to be too much too? So those that may be really pushing on the stress level of physiological exertion, and is that something that you also see? Like, there's stressors and there's stressors, and this is a deliberate stress, which one might take on. And what happens then? And maybe, and I'll just add to this, is it sometimes of the nature of, running, the jostling, or the duration could be another stress, just like the absolute lack of ability, like the blood is not in the gut, or are there things like that one might see?
Just lost you. I'm so sorry. There you go. I lost your face, your beautiful face. Yeah. So there's a lot to that. Yes. Unpacking what you just said. I'll start with the first part is, and I hate saying this because I used to be a runner, and I used to be a trainer. So I was in the world at one point, and I highly respect it. But when I say this, I'm going to come across like I'm judging them or putting them down. A lot of my gym people, the people that are in great shape, whether it's not the gym, could be marathon runners, whatever the runners, but I was a runner, whatever. The people that their bodies look amazing, they're in great shape, they test the worst. So when they come in and you have that beautiful body and they're like, they're dumping all their health problems on me. I test them. They have so many vitamin deficiencies, right? They'll have a lot of food sensitivities, and it's just, they're a mess inside, right? But the outside looks great. So I do believe that added stress, and a lot of times what comes with them is restricted diets, a whole type of psychological thing. So yeah, that's definitely, they're just not, I always say skinny doesn't equate healthy, neither does beauty, right? So I try to, that's a whole nother realm I'm in, and I have to deal with that. A lot of them have thyroid issues, the women, that's why they're always going. They can't sit still.
Right.
So that's a huge thing. And then the other thing, you were talking about the physical stress, for sure. Like a lot of us have to stop running at some point because our lumbar spine will have a bulging disc or sciatica. So a lot of people, they come in and they're perfect. They're like, but my muscles are great. I'm perfect. Why is my disc bad? And they just think that because everything's visually looking perfect, that it would keep the disc all protected, but that's not how it works. That jarring, is not good for the joints. So we do see the physical aspect of, sports and overworking the body at some point too. So
Interesting.
I've always not been great with the stretching and the elongating of things and the opening up of the joints myself. So that's something that I think a lot of us miss in the programs, so I think with patients, I'm like, you really need to stretch these joints out.
Well, and I think that also there's, at least in my world, in my little bubble, and the people that I talk to, and coaches that are really informed are really coming into an understanding of like, okay, strength training, mobility, range of motion, like we're really talking about and really understanding intensity in a different way and duration, especially for this age, within perimenopause and beyond. Like what do we need, and how do we manage and balance the stressors, and how do we get the most out of it? It is very difficult for us to change the soup that we're in of work hard all the time. And it's a soup. It's a big cultural thing, and it permeates through so much. But let's get back to the gut. So you mentioned a little bit about symptoms and how it shows up. And I think where it becomes really difficult is understanding, is it perimenopause or is it my gut that needs support? And how do we understand? Like you talk about joint health. Well, that's a symptom of perimenopause, like the aching joints. Like it's not kind of like, oh, I did a too long of a run. It's like my joints hurt, but that's also could be a gut health issue. So how are we teasing it? Can we tease it? What are the specific things that we can look for when we're thinking about our gut and the health of it?
So a lot of the symptoms that I'm going to say, they mimic perimenopause. Well, and so I'm in my 50s, so I'm almost done with it, like just about there. So I can speak also from a woman's experience is that every time we had a health issue, my friends and I, we would be running, we'd ask a medical doctor friend or whatever, and they'd be like, oh, it's menopause or oh, it's perimenopause. Everything just gets brushed off. And it kind of is frustrating, I think. I don't know how you feel, but it's like, okay, I'm just getting brushed off. Like, this is just what it is. And you just have to go through it and suffer, right? And I feel like women, yeah, I feel like you get your periods, suffer, and then you become pregnant. That's just what it is. Like, so I feel like as women, we're always just told that, and I don't really necessarily agree with that. So my thing is, if you come to me, I'm going to tell you what the symptoms are, but you're going to see they're very similar. But if you come to me with your health problem, I just go right to the gut. I don't listen to all the noise. Like, I'm not worrying about your joint, or you're telling me my joints hurt, I have a headache, I have, I don't know. You might say that you're tired, right? I hear you. I write it down, but I go right to the gut because I know if I heal that gut, a lot of these symptoms clear up. So I do think perimenopause, and when we do the gut, so we work on the hormone balancing, which is really important. So some of the symptoms would be joint pain, right? But if we stay in the gut, it would be like the reflux, the indigestion, the bloating. Some girls are like, I don't know, I wake up, my stomach's flat. I look 4 months pregnant when by the time it's the afternoon or the evening, I go to bed, right? That's gut. But it also could be related with the hormones, which I'll get to in a minute. And then you could have diarrhea, constipation, back and forth. You might have days where you're like, oh my gosh, I had to stay home because of the bathroom. Different things, right? So if we're staying in the gut, we're like right there, diverticulitis, like I said, all those itis. If we go outside the gut, some of the symptoms could be the joint pain, the muscle. We do have infertility and problems with the ovaries, period things, headaches, migraines, chronic fatigue is a big one. Are you tired? Brain fog, inability to focus. And they'll just tell you it's perimenopause, it's menopause, but when we work with people, here's my thing. When we work with people and all of a sudden these symptoms get better, they'll look at me and they're like, well, is it hormonal? And I'm like, it probably is. But when the gut's healed, you're balancing out your hormones. Your body's, I always say your body's resetting itself, So, you can feel really bad. And once you start working out, you're like, wow, I feel great. So the endorphin release and things like that. So the symptoms that I just gave you are very similar to perimenopause. And they're also similar to, like if I get even deeper, if someone has candida, or they have like a pathogenic thing going on in their gut, which my job is to find out, make sure I detox that, but they'll mimic each other. So when I'm doing a leaky gut evaluation, I don't forget the other things that it could be too, that I have to address too. I have to like marry the two together and work. So when I do testing, I'm testing thyroid. I'll test for pathogens in the gut. I'm going to test for vitamin deficiencies that could be there, right? Because when we're putting them all back together, we don't want to leave something out, right? So
right, and then you might need to boost those areas. Like say it's a vitamin deficiency, then it's also like you may need extra support in this area to give your body that kind of oomph. Right? Like it's like I need to just give it a little bit more because there was, I don't know who said it, but something like there's no amount of kale that can sometimes help you get out of the slump. And so it's like, you can be doing all the right things. And this is where supplements may be a really good option for you, is to get you out of there. And do we want to rely on it? No, we don't want to have to stay in the supplement world if our
Exactly.
body is taking in the nutrition and the nourishment that it can once it's healed.
Exactly. And sometimes you're not absorbing nutrients from kale or the vitamins that you're taking, the powders or whatever, because that gut wall is not working well. So that's why I always go to the gut, and then I calm down, and then I look at everything else. I'm like, okay, now what is everything else telling me? But
so where else do we need to get into? Can you just talk a little bit about inflammation? So you mentioned like the bloating and it's really fascinating. Okay, there's a two-part question here. Just from my own experience, I know that when I was training very heavily, my gut was horrible. I couldn't digest any sort of milk products at all. Wheat was out the like I had to become gluten-free, and my food bill had to go way up, and I just couldn't deal with anything. I was one of those, look great, totally unhealthy humans. And like totally me. But then it changes. And so what is fascinating to me is it was absolutely gut. It was also absolutely an energy availability or lack of energy availability issue for me. But how we can, what I want to ask you is like how we cycle in and out sometimes of these sensitivities. So that's the one question. And then the inflammation is, will we see it in the bloating? Because that's what I experienced, tons of bloating, gassy, et cetera. Do we also see the inflammation in other parts of our body? Is it also showing up in, in our face and our, like in other, and how we heal through, stress and whatnot?
Definitely. So the first part, what was the first part?
Well, it's the sensitivities. So two parts is just talking about inflammation. The second one is the sensitivities. And can we cycle in and out? Is that normal, or is that just you've changed the status of your gut health?
So the sensitivities is, I really approach things like 3 or 4 prongs, depending on the patient, right? Mm-hmm. So the first prong is food sensitivities. So what we do is we just do a blood test. They run them, and we find out which ones are super high, and we remove them. So I'll do that hardcore. I really like, we start off for 30 days. So they psychologically are like, okay, I can do this. And then I really want to go 3 months because the research is they're arguing right now, do these things stay in the body, these antibodies, for 3 months or 4 months? So there's some people say, gotta do it 3 months. Some people, gotta do it 4 months. So I just go with the 90-day like protocol of removing them. You can retest after 4 months, but I make patients go out to 6 just so it's cleared and you're not wasting your money getting the same results, right?
Right.
So also, if some people don't retest, they don't maybe have the money, or they just don't want to do it, you can look at your symptoms. You can track your symptoms. So for example, mine was diarrhea. And so when I do put wheat back in, I just feel it coming back, my fatigue and the diarrhea, and then I regret it. I'm like, oh, why did I do that?
Right.
But here's the thing about the cycling that you said.
Yeah.
When I'm just going to talk about retesting because to me it's scientific and I can see it, but I have retested people and some people's tests are identical. They nothing
shifted.
It cleared, but their body still doesn't like it because they kind of interact the food with your blood and they figure it out. So I'm just like, all right, nothing's really changing. I think this is going to be your nemesis for a while. You really just need to stay away from these, 5 things that didn't change. Some of them just start clearing and some go away. So there's no cookbook to that. It's just that, that some people get over the sensitivities and some people don't, just like at food allergies, like some people get over them and some of them don't. Now, food sensitivities are definitely the food your body's attacking. However, it could be that if you eat too much of one food, which I just overdo blueberries like there's no tomorrow, it could come up because they say if your body can't keep up with digesting it, there'll be a residue and it starts trying to attack it. Like if you're kind of just eating too much of one thing, it can't clear it. That could be a cause of a food sensitivity. Also, if 1 or 2 is the main culprit for you, let's say wheat and dairy go in and it's just like attacking it, it will start attacking other things. I call them casualties of war. They're just caught up in the whole noise. That's how inflammatory things can be. So, cyclic wise, I don't really know. It's not like cut and dry and cookie book for people, but I can share with you that some people get over them and they're like, yeah, wheat's a tough one, because wheat and dairy, they're tough because they're very altered in the United States. And I say the United States because you're not going to believe this part I'm going to tell you. I've had very many patients at this point tell me, I'm going to Italy. It's my dream trip. I don't care. I'm going to Jerusalem. I'm going to Greece. This is my dream bucket list. I don't care if I get diarrhea. I'm like, all right, well, bring the Depends, because before you saw me, you couldn't leave your house. And this could happen on your trip. I said, and don't do Tuscany on a bike ride. Like, make sure, you're near bathrooms. Like, just be smart about this. They go there, all of them. There's been, I remember, like 5, 6, 7 stories in the last few years, pre-COVID. They didn't have any problems.
No,
there was no tomorrow. They came back here thinking they were cured. They started it up again. Boom.
Yeah. I've seen it personally.
Very
as well.
changed. Our food is very altered here. And the body, I believe, it's chemistry, right? The body's meant to recognize the chemistry in foods. Once we alter the chemistry in foods, the body's like, I don't know what this is. I'll just attack it because I don't know if it's harmful. And bananas, pineapples, you name them, they're watermelon, they've been changed. So they have a hard time with me. Like, why would it be a healthy food? And I'm like,
it's a whole
genetically modified foods.
Yeah.
There's the milk. Everyone's all happy with that milk that has more protein. I'm like, oh, no, don't put a fake protein in milk because you can't already handle the other proteins in milk. It's like there's no. Yeah. Once you hear about adding proteins to things, I'm like, oh no.
Keep it.
Yeah. And we eat a lot of processed foods and packaged foods, and we do test for food additives. We actually have a test that you can see if you're attacking those. So America's just very into not eating too healthy.
Very much into not eating too healthy. It's perfect. And so you've already given us a couple of things to think about. So things in moderation, like don't overdo your blueberries because my body might I
just eat them like all the time. I'm like the person who's like, I don't care how much they cost, I'm buying them.
Right. It's so funny. It's like such a helpful thing. But I think there's a point to what you're saying here. It's like, it's everything in moderation and trying to continues. Like if we have so much of one thing, we might be losing out on something else. And so it's this idea of really bringing in the variety is potentially what you're saying, and keeping things as natural to the source as possible. I know about the bread thing, like from my husband is Romanian. And so we have this experience of going back and forth and absolutely very, very different. I have no problems there. I cannot buy store-bought bread here in Canada. I can eat my own homemade bread. So we make a lot of bread in my household. There's nothing else other than, flour, salt, and a very small amount of yeast and water. Like it's so simple. And
you're fine.
And I'm fine. Yeah. So there's something absolutely in the processing. So if for those of you that have had real challenges, I think that you've given us some really amazing things to think about, like the time for healing, the things that we can do. So actually, okay, so steps, let's just summarize some of the steps you can do to support your gut health. And I am actually going to just say right now that you also are giving a phenomenal free gift, because it applies to the discussion that we're getting into of 7 days of the kind gut detox. So you guys will have something in your hands by clicking and subscribing to Dr. Lisa's kind gut health detox. So we have something tangible. What are the steps for those listeners right now? There's some of the steps that we can think about to support our gut health.
Okay. The one of the most important things would be doing a food sensitivity test. Of course, that requires, buying something. But I can assure you that I did leaky gut health, leaky gut diets without lab testing for years. It's very hard to figure out which foods, I can't even do it, to try to figure out what food your body's attacking. So if you were to you want to go the distance and work with me, you would definitely can do that. The other thing that you could do that would require working with me would be you could figure out the gut microbiome. So that's a stool test. And I work across the globe, so it might matter in little countries, but it wouldn't matter in most countries. Is a stool test, and they test what you said, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these microbes in your gut, the good bacteria. Right. And they will say what is high, what is low. And they say, here's her or his imbalance. And then the whole job is to say, well, these 4 things have to be in their probiotic. So it's my job that you're hiring me to do, to go shopping and try to find the right probiotic that'll fix your gut imbalance. So that's the restore part. What I tend to do is, I'll reveal what the food triggers are and we remove them. And then we want to go in and restore the imbalances and the deficiencies and everything that we find. So that's something that you could do. You could also, the other part of the stool test is looking at what I mentioned before is pathogenic stuff. So if you had an overgrowth of yeast in your gut, if you had something like E. coli or salmonella or any remnants of anything C. diff, like all, they do parasites, worms, bacteria, fungus, like all the things. If I find something, I do a very gentle cleanse to get that out. So that's like going deep, like with something you could do if you wanted to really go deeper. If you were like, that's great, but what could I do right now tomorrow in my house? You could start 2 things. One is just find a really good probiotic. I do have one that I particularly like that I've tested enough people that I feel like 80% of my people do well on. So you can reach out to me and I can show you it. But getting yourself on a really good probiotic is really important. And that at least begins, setting up some flora in there and trying to balance it out. And I said it begins because I was on a really good one. And then when I did my stool test, when I was having my diarrhea issues, I looked at it and I'm like, oh, I don't need any of these things in here, but maybe I didn't need them because I was taking it. But so I just had to switch my brand to a brand that had the 4 things that my gut needed. So that really helps with that bloating. If you get the right probiotic, it really helps. You could. So
can I just ask a question about that though? Because I think it's kind of an important one. So and I'm not an expert in this, but like a lot of the research is get your probiotics from food because they have the diversity in which you need. And so is this, when you are mentioning the probiotics from a supplement form, is this in addition to, or is this in a place of it's a supplement because you need, or you've identified that you need that extra boost to get those specific, that specific line of microbiome up? Is that a clear question for you?
Yeah, it's kind of both. What I tend to do, the next thing I was going to say is you can get the probiotics through your foods, but you have to eat fermented foods. Right. And you have to start that world of fermenting your yogurt, your own, bone broth, collagen. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sauerkraut, things like that. Yeah. Most people don't do that, and they don't do that on a consistent basis. So I would say if you're doing that, supplement with the right probiotic as well. But this test that I'm talking about is very specific to finding which group of microbes that you're deficient in. And we want to make sure that supplement, and it's kind of not wasting your money, right? So you want to make sure that supplement is going to fix that imbalance. But definitely probiotic foods was the next thing I was going to say. Right. Most people just look at me like, I ain't doing that.
And I think there's something important that you said about it. And I know that I speak to my athletes about this. It's like feeding the fish every day. If you aren't committed to eating your probiotics every day, it's like it's hard to get out of the system of poor, of suboptimal, let's say, gut health. And it is, your fish will die. Your fish are going to die if they're not supported every single day.
Like I give it to my sons. My sons are in their 20s and I see it like, it's like 60 days. I'm like, you still have the probiotic? You should be like, why is that still there? Why is it still half full? I was like, so they're like, well, I take it when I want to. I'm like, that's not how that works. You're putting them in, they're going to duplicate, replicate and grow a microbial family, So that's the first thing. The other thing to do, I mentioned bone broth. I went into collagen a little bit. To repair that gut wall, bone broth is the number one thing, and that's really simple to make. You could just go on and Google that. Making it yourself is the best way. I know everybody's going to ask, can I buy it? You can buy it, but that stuff still, once you buy anything, you got to realize you're in a different level. You're in more of a processing level. So making it yourself is just getting the bones and cooking them for about 24 to 48 hours. And then, that broth that's left over, you could just drink it straight up. Super healing. It has collagen in it. It has all the peptides that you need that are going to rebuild the tissue in the wall, that gut lining. And you'll feel great. It makes you feel great. Now, they do sell collagen in the powder form. And again, most people do both because I don't want to say nobody, but most of my patients aren't making collagen every Sunday and drinking it for every day, myself included. Like, I'd like to think I am, but I hate to even admit it, but I get caught up in my life and behind on that. So, a really good collagen supplement, really, you want to make sure it has all the peptides, all the amino acids, right? You want to make sure that you have those, because some of them, they don't list them. I would just
it's not worth
find
it.
one that lists all of them. Yeah. And it should just straight up say, grass-fed, hydrolyzed bovine in the ingredients, because that's where it's coming from. It's coming from a bovine. And that's it. Once you start seeing all those other things, that's just garbage. So, the biggest bang for your buck is just straight up pure collagen. Vital Proteins makes a great brand. That's the one that we use. They have it. It's in a blue bottle and has all the aminos, and that one's a good one. Garden of Life has one. So, a lot of the companies are pretty good, but some of them aren't.
When you say amino acids, so this is interesting. So, like we have essential amino acids, non-essential amino acids. Are they all, like, when you say amino acids, are you talking about, because collagen wouldn't have all the essential amino acids in it, or peptides. So are we looking for, like, I can just see questions coming and we're like, what are you actually saying here? Like, what am I actually looking for?
Do you want me to go get mine and I can show you what the profile looks like?
Sure. We would love
to give me a second though. I have to run in the kitchen. Hold on. I'll show you.
We are going to, and I will just, while we're doing this, I just like, what a phenomenal thing that we can start thinking about here. And in terms of, at the very basis, we need to come in. I just want to reiterate, like, this is the foundation of health before and then we're optimizing or trying to figure out what's the next step. So this gut health piece is just at such a foundation. All right, let's see here. You've got it from your kitchen. And
you probably might know this brand. This one's pretty good. We tried a whole bunch. Can you see it?
Okay, Vital Proteins. Yes. There's a little bit of a glare, but that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then when you turn it, it's going to have the profile.
Okay.
So you wanted to see that.
It's not clear, but basically,
it just you want to just see them listed.
Huge list of the profile of all the peptides that it would have. Okay. Yeah.
And
Excellent.
then the ingredient will just say, one ingredient, which is just, and you're correct. Like when you're talking about collagen, I can't remember what the sequence is of which amino acids it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And, but I just go for this one because I have
just like, this is the one that's working.
Some of them don't list it. It's so annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that it's one of the challenges. And I know, and I come from a place of, cause I am in a lot of conversations about this, is like, okay, great. I know I need collagen. Now, which one? Because then we go look and we, there's just a wall and people get so lost, and then we're wasting money because it's not the right one. And it's actually not providing any of the pieces to it. And, okay. So
exactly.
So I'm conscious of, taking more of your time. Is there anything else that, you haven't pointed out of things and steps that we can take to support our gut health?
Yeah. The other thing is, omega-3s are really supportive of the gut health. So I know there's a whole controversy with fish oils, and, I don't know, the medical doctors keep pushing that the fish oils aren't that healthy. The best way to get is just through cold water fish. And so to add more fish into your diet, salmon, tuna, things like that. What it is if the fish, they're in the cold water, there's oil between their skin and their meat to keep them right warm. That's the oil that we like, or our bodies are good for our bodies. It helps with the repair of that gut wall. So if you're trying to repair your gut, but it also is great for the skin. I think we didn't even go into that. You had mentioned, can it affect your skin? Definitely the gut can affect the skin. There's actually molecular mimicry that goes on in the gut wall. It's very complicated. And it can mimic a lot of different things, but back to the omegas, they help with the skin, they help with the heart, they help with the gut. They're just beautiful things. So you also can get omegas, I believe, like if you did the nuts and seeds and olive oil and things like that. But they say the plant source is just not as good as the fish source. But I just say, just start, like you said, moderation, put it all in your diet. So you've got trail mix you can do, seeds, avocados, olive oil, coconut oil, flax, chia, whatever you like. Those help too with the gut.
It's one of my absolutes, like omega-3s, absolute.
Yes.
I mean, there's so much research, and I'm not as familiar of the research that is going against it at this point in time. I just know that there's mountains of research saying go and get wild, like.
Yeah. And then the people that I do see that live in more of the fish areas, like fishing, like, let's just use Oregon, for example, or something like that, where they're more a fish culture. Town culture. That I test them, and their cardiac panels are good. Where if you're going to do something more like my area, New Jersey, New York, although we do fish, it's seasonal, it's not so great. So I see patterns that exist.
Yeah.
So another thing you can do is aloe vera, which is phenomenal. I don't know if anyone has done that or what they feel about it, but I was doing that right out of chiropractic school. I was taught that. We didn't even know what a leaky gut was. And it was just, if a patient came in and said, oh, my stomach's not right, I would be like, get on some aloe vera juice. And it's just super healing. Again, if you cut the outside, like the skin, you would know that. My grandmother would grab the aloe
totally
plant, put it on you.
Like for other uses, I've always known, and for aloe vera, not for, I didn't know that for the gut. So that's really wonderful that I've
So aloe vera is something you can start doing. Again, I have brands that I'm a bit of a brand snob because I've tried so many. And that's why I'll say to people, just do this because we know it works. Just through people working out and coming back and go, oh my gosh, that really helped me. Thank you so much. My joints are so much better. I have a better workout. And I'm like, great.
Awesome.
So I'm a bit of a brand snob with aloe too, but you could go into a health food store and they sell it. So it's there. Yeah. It doesn't taste that great. I tell people just chug it, get it over with.
Put it in your smoothie. Maybe you can mask it a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
A good multivitamin is actually pretty important if you had deficiencies, but I'm not a big vitamin person because I feel like there's a lot of noise on social media where it's like, well, take vitamin D or take this or take that, but you don't know what you're deficient in. So I'm a little bit cautious when we talk vitamins and someone just goes and takes the supplement. I'm not a big supplement person. I'd rather look at the vitamin deficiency and say, well, it's not too low. If you just increase these foods in your diet, you can, make, as long as your gut is doing really well, you could absorb some of the foods. But if it's super low, I might say, let's supplement with this specific vitamin for a little while to get it up, and then you can take it out. But a good multis can't hurt, again, if your gut's not healthy, you don't know if you're absorbing things. But I see people all the time come in my office, they buy the most expensive vitamins. And then I do the testing, and our testing tests what's in the blood and what's in the cells. So we do cellular function tests. And so if I see someone's cell, let's say super low in a vitamin, and they're like, I take that every day and I got the most expensive brand. And I'm like, well, your body doesn't absorb that one. So stop taking it.
Super interesting. Hey, like it is a bit of a minefield. And I think what you're pointing to is specificity matters, and not just the specificity of what you're taking and how you're taking it, but like your own body and what it is that responds to it. And if you are suffering, and maybe this is where we can kind of come to a close, is if you're suffering, then this is one place you can start. And working with somebody like Dr. Lisa, like this is a place that will definitely give you so much energy and repair and feeling like you can handle more and take more on. And it's not about taking more on, but it's like actually living to where you can be living which you may not be at this point in time. So super fascinating. Is there anything, before I ask you my rapid fire questions, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on that we haven't?
No, I think that's good. I think that's,
I think we've covered a lot of ground.
We did. It was a great conversation. I think just to understand, I love what you just said. It's almost like if you're, you go to the gym, you just do your own thing, right? And if you really want to get a specific result, or you really want to get specific to your own, we're not all the same. Like I could do a workout my friend does, and I just don't get the results that she gets. And you'll be like, why? If you want to learn, you want to get specific to your own body, your own cells, that's you can go very deep with me if you want. I mean, you can go really deep.
Well, and I think that if also for those that have just tried everything, like I've had talked to so many people, it's just like, I've just done all the things. Like I am so done with it.
Yes.
And
exactly.
If you haven't done gut health, then you haven't done the foundation. And that's the thing. And I would argue if there's suffering, that's actually where we start. After ensuring that you're eating enough. Like, I don't know, they're kind of equal, but like if you're not eating enough, which is a common issue among many female athletes in particular, like
yes,
that's
glad you brought that up.
That's going to perturb your gut health as well. So we've got to like make sure that we're eating enough. So what an amazing conversation. Okay, I have 3 questions. Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
All right. What is one thing that you're learning about specifically, or that you're working on specifically, that you are super excited about?
I have 2. One is what we already talked about, that the autistic world or the Asperger's world is exploding in lab testing. So I'm super excited about that, because we came from nothing to, oh my gosh, we could really help these kids. So I'm just so excited about that. The other is, due to my own issues and due to my lifestyle and where I'm at in my life, I am now really dumping more into thyroid and menopause. I don't know why every 50-year-old woman in my practice has a thyroid issue. I don't know. I'm going to find out. I'm going to figure this out. And I don't like that the way they're treating women through perimenopause and menopause. Even too many breast cancers, just too many things that when you hit my age, you'll see it. It's not good. So I'm excited about that too. So I'm kind of on the women realm of thyroid, perimenopause, menopause, and then the kids. So I'm kind of,
you're constantly juggling your hats.
I keep thinking I should pick, but I can't pick.
No, I get it from a person that loves to juggle lots of balls. What is one thing that you're grateful for?
I would say God. I mean, I don't think I could get through any of this without God, anything. So my family, of course, but above that would be God, because he blessed me with them. So that's just really, I mean, I always tell people, I don't know how you get through this life without God.
Like I get that. What is one principle that you live by?
It might come from God, but it would definitely be stick with truth. Just stay truthful, stay true to you and true to your soul, your being. Not necessarily to the world and to our earthly beings, our human, but stay true to you.
Amazing.
That's it. Just righteousness.
Amazing. Well, if I'm going to leave the last word to you, is there anything else that you want to say before we close out?
No, I really appreciate this time. I'm really glad that you asked me to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wonderful.